Throughout Invincible, we have seen 13 major to semi-major Viltrumites. Despite their limited appearances, almost every time a Viltrumite shows up on screen, destruction follows. And it all begs the question, who is the strongest Viltrumite? Well, after analyzing every appearance, I think I figured it out. First, I'd like to talk about each Viltrumite's victories. Throughout Season 1, Mark alone only defeats Titan, Kill Cannon twice, and a single Reanimant. With help from the Teen Team, he defeats the second invasion of the Flaxons, and with Eve's help, he defeats Doc Seismic. Mark, even with help, struggles to defeat the first Flaxon invasion, the Flaxon commander from the third invasion, the Reanimant in the sewer, and the Kaiju that nearly splits him in half. Then, Mark outright loses his fight against Machine Head's crew, mainly due to Battle Beast's pure ferocity, even with the help of the new Guardians of the Globe. Mark again loses brutally, this time to his own father who almost kills him.
Think, Mark!
In Season 2, Mark is able to defeat the Elephant, Doc Seismic, and the Magma Knights, the second Darkwing, and Angstrom Levy alone. He defeats the Depth Dweller with assistance from Cecil, the Sekuids with the help of the Guardians of the Globe, Octoboss and the Octominions with Rexplode, and with Ennis's temporary help, the Sea Monster from Episode 7. Mark is almost killed by the Mauler variants in Episode 1, however, he is saved by Angstrom's sacrifice.
No, that's enough. I said stop. I won't build my utopia with blood.
Later in the season, Mark's battle with Lucan would also have led to defeat if not for Nolan's intervention. Then in that same episode, Mark begins to fight like a Viltrumite against Thula. However, Mark's hesitation leads to her getting a cowardice strike that would have again led to Mark's death if not for Omni-Man. Mark's only true defeat this season comes from his fight with Anissa, where her speed and strength were way beyond anything he had experienced before. Mark only remains alive after this encounter because she let him go, knowing he may be of use to the Viltrum Empire in the future. Finally, in Season 3, Mark begins to train to be stronger. This is reflected in the fact that he wins many more fights alone. Not only this, but it is mentioned in the beginning of the season that Mark's abilities now may rival those of Anissa's.
Over the last 90 days, Mark's speed has increased 65%, his endurance 70%, and his strength 138%.
Did he beat that Viltrumite woman who made us all shit our pants 3 months ago?
We think so.
However, I would like to make the argument that Anissa likely was not using her full strength when fighting Invincible. We know that Anissa had the opportunity to kill Mark and did not, meaning she most likely was only testing Mark's strength at the time. This may actually tell us that Invincible may not be as strong as Cecil and Donald believe. While alone, Mark defeats the Giant while training, Multipol, Kursk, Furnace, King Immortal, Powerplex, Mohawk Mark, and Angstrom Levy. He and Rexplode both fight Drop Kick and Fight Master. With assistance from the Guardians of the Globe, he defeats Cecil and his Reanimant while being neutralized by the frequency that affects him.
Frequency blocked.
I will never work for you again!
Later in the season, however, we are shown that Mark is not able to fight Cecil's forces alone, being pretty badly injured when he tries to comfort Cecil alone about what Mark believes to be spy equipment from the GDA. He and Oliver both fight Tether Tyrant and Magma Maniac, however, it is very clear most of the damage of the two are done by Invincible. On the flip side, Mark and Oliver's confrontation with the Maulers show more destruction being caused by Oliver. In fact, Mark very nearly gets defeated due to the Maulers' nervous system gun. Invincible and Oliver only win the fight due to Oliver's mistake killing of the Maulers. Later, Mark and Eve's attempt to fight Mr. Liu almost leads to Invincible's death. However, with Titan's plan to kill Mr. Liu an apparent success, Mark and Eve win. During the Invincible War, Mark fights alongside Bolt, Kid Thor, and Knockout to seemingly finish Mohawk Mark after the two Invincibles' first encounter. Later in the same episode, normal Mark and Eve fight Hooded and Omni-Man Mark, which leads to Eve being injured. However, throughout this fight, it is quite apparent that our Mark is quite capable of holding his own against these variants.
Oh, okay. I'll admit, you're stronger than I thought. If you hadn't wasted so much time protecting these losers, you probably would have beaten me already.
In the final episode, Mark and Oliver together both briefly fight with Powerplex. So far, Mark's final encounter is against Conquest. Although Mark technically gets help from Oliver in this confrontation, it's not much, as Conquest easily puts Oliver in his place.
And you are? I prefer to know who I'm dismembering.
However, Eve's assistance gave Mark enough time to recuperate after having his leg broken. Eve also gets a powerful blast that at least weakens Conquest enough for Mark to finish him off. At least to me, Mark's fight with Conquest at the end of Season 3 could not have been won without the assistance of Eve. Even though I didn't mention them in the beginning, I feel it is important to quickly talk about each of the Invincible variants we know of right now. With many of these variants, they don't have different names as they are all Mark Grayson from different universes, so we will be often using fan names for these variants. The first Mark variant we are introduced to is at the beginning of Season 2, that being Corrupted Invincible. This Mark is seen struggling to defeat the Immortal. It is only when Omni-Man comes that the Immortal from this universe is destroyed.
I've been hit harder before.
So arrogant.
This Invincible is also seen as able to alone defeat Adam Eve, although she might possibly be holding back as it's implied she still cared about this Mark. In Season 2, we are also briefly introduced to a defeated version of Invincible. This universe's Omni-Man was killed with experimental quantum bombs after trying to take over Earth, leading to the destruction of half of Europe. This Mark variant would later be detained after being worn down. He would be imprisoned in a secure room in the GDA. At the end of Season 2, we are introduced to Cape Vincible. This Mark variant ended up killing his father.
I murdered my own father. You really think you're gonna take me down?
Later in the Invincible War, we see this variant again. This time, he destroys Hong Kong and Hollywood, fighting Best Tiger and El Chupacabra in the process. Best Tiger survived, however, it is unknown if El Chupacabra did as well. This variant is shown to live through his fights, however, he ends up getting sent to the wasteland. Spore Vincible is a variant of Mark that is very briefly seen. Intriguingly, this is the variant which is seen in a crater, dismembered, and it is unclear who may have defeated him. Goggles Vincible was seen to be able to simultaneously fight and defeat Monster Girl, Bulletproof, and all of Robot's drones. Quite interestingly, he knew Rudy would be controlling the robot drones, however, he did not know that Rudy was no longer deformed. Rexplode would have entered the fight later, however, by the time we see the Rogue Guardians, he is already there and injured. Once Rex runs out of actual ammunition to use, Rex uses whatever he has at his disposal. His goggles, pieces of the wall. Once that doesn't work, Rex determines that the only way to kill this Invincible would be through using his whole entire spine as an explosive.
You're out of shit to explode.
I've got one thing left.
And what's that?
My entire goddamn skeleton.
Mohawk Mark is another evil Invincible variant. We see this variant temporarily get the upper hand of the normal Mark until our Invincible punches his ears, knocking him out. This Mark variant seems to be one of the strongest as he recovers fairly quickly after getting knocked out and then immediately is able to knock out Powerplex with a punch. We later see the normal Invincible, Bolt, Knockout, and Kid Thor recovering after defeating this variant. However, we then see Mohawk Mark wake up, with his next appearance being above the Grayson household. He also survives the Invincible War and is sent to the Wasteland universe. Another survivor of the Invincible War, Viltrum-Vincible. This Mark seems to be a variant who embraced his Viltrumite heritage. He fights Wolfman in New York City, presumably destroying the city later until on the third day leveling Chicago. Bulletproofable is an Invincible variant shown to be wearing a costume similar to Bulletproof's and Mark's first outfit from Season 1. This variant decides to invade the GDA headquarters, however, he is killed by the Reaniman, snapping his neck. Mustachable is another variant that seems to have adopted his Viltrumite legacy. Sporting an all-white uniform form in traditional Viltrumite mustache. This variant is defeated single-handedly by Tech Jacket. Omnivincible is another Mark variant who survives the Viltrumite war only to be sent to the Wasteland. This Invincible variant is shown to have a disdain for Adam Eve, even breaking our version's leg in combat without hesitation.
I always hated you.
He is then shown fighting the reanimant Cecil sends to distract the variant. On day 3, we are shown him destroying Tokyo, later meeting Angstrom at the Grayson household and being stranded in the aforementioned Wasteland universe. No Goggles Mark is the Invincible variant we see defeat most of the members of the Guardians of the Globe, particularly showing his strength as he is able to defeat the Immortal.
Hey, I don't need more motivation to kill you, but sure, insult me. Come on!
Something we have only seen our Mark do. He is only defeated by the second Darkwing, who sacrifices himself by bringing No Goggles Mark into the Shadowverse. We'll start with Mark since he gives us the most information to go off of, and is the first Viltrumite we are introduced to. Mark in Season 1 is shown to be defeated by almost everyone he goes up against, mainly Battle Beast and Omni-Man. Later in Season 2, he is defeated by the Maulers, the Depth Dweller, Thula, and Anissa. Finally, in Season 3, Mark's training starts to pay off as he finally locks in and begins to fight like a Viltrumite. Mark is only defeated by the Maulers again due to their inhibiting of his nervous system.
You cannot kill what I am made from.
And Mr. Liu is an immortal dragon that is impossible to defeat when in dragon form. Mark is only challenged physically again by Season's End with the arrival of Conquest. Mark only wins his fight with Conquest because of Eve's intervention and Conquest only wanting to toy with Mark. Mark from this dimension may be the strongest Invincible, but he has plenty of improvement to go before he is a true Viltrumite. By contrast, in Season 1, Omni-Man alone kills all the members of the Guardians of the Globe, decimates the entirety of the Flaxen homeworld, and kills at least 2,000 people in his attempt to convince Mark to join him. Later on, Omni-Man holds his own against Lucan and Vidor while having to defend and support Mark, later destroying Thula's jaw and seemingly killing Vidor. In Season 3, Nolan, with the help of Alan, kills his executioner. We know from these encounters that Omni-Man is at least stronger than Mark, Lucan, Vidor, Thula, and his executioner. It can also be inferred that both Mark and Nolan are stronger than Oliver as he is not yet fully grown. When it comes to Anissa and Conquest, things are tricky as they both fight Mark, who we have already considered as not the strongest Viltrumite. They also fight extremely different, as Anissa fights with speed and Conquest is nothing but a masochistic brute who gets enjoyment out of the pain of others. In the beginning of Season 3, Donald tells Cecil that Mark's strength and speed have increased. The comment is made that they now believe Mark is strong enough to defeat Anissa. However, one thing to note is that Anissa wants Mark to join the Empire and Conquest just wants to have fun fighting Mark. From that knowledge, we can speculate that Anissa and Conquest were not using their full strength on Mark, only using enough to demonstrate the strength of Viltrumites. Anissa wants him to know that his resistance is futile. Conquest only starts to fight with everything he has towards the end of his encounter. From this, I propose the argument that although Conquest is stronger, Anissa is the better fighter. We see her use her speed to an extent that we haven't even seen Nolan achieve, appearing above Mark in seconds after hitting him thousands of miles into the sky. She appears as nothing but a blur.
Remember that we started with reason.
Conquest, however, is able to recover from having his prosthetic destroyed, take a direct blast from Eve after she unleashes her full potential on him, and most likely survive having his head caved in beyond recognition by Invincible.
This time I'll make sure she's dead. Hey.
When it comes to the strength of the Viltrumites, I think the strongest is between Conquest and Nolan. However, I want to give Omni-Man the advantage as Nolan also seems to have speed and planning on his side. If you enjoyed this video and want to see who the strongest Invincible variant is, click the video on the screen.